Now it's green.
Okay.
It's green now. All right, so we're on to the report of the first selectwoman.
Good evening,
Hello.
Board of Finance
Evening.
and others. It is, those, I just have to say, the previous item, a lot of meetings. I think Marcia at one point at the end said it was 60 hours.
I think it was 48 hours of budget meetings as of that time.
A lot of hours of budget meetings. So that takes me to my first point, which is to thank everybody again for all the hard work through all of that. The process was, I thought, pretty smooth, and you guys worked some awesome magic. I don't know how you got to where you got, but I mean, it was really good collaboration, and I appreciate all of that. The town meeting was great as well, and I guess we're going to look forward to the annual meeting on the 3rd of May, and then hopefully to the referendum on the 17th. So, without anything withstanding, all things should be a go, and I've gotten some pretty positive feedback just from residents and writ large across town hall. Not that those folks are voters necessarily, but yeah, I'm excited for next year already, believe it or not. But let's get through this one first. There is a lot going on across town for those of you who follow Board of Selectmen meetings or just the chatter across town. Some of the major things, recently we had, the governor was here. We had Senator Blumenthal for the Ukraine gathering, and I took advantage of those opportunities to address some major items, the Candlewood Lake Sewer project being a really big one. Of $1.5 million has been committed by the WPCA for a study, and we've been working with the 4 peninsula communities quite extensively. We had a long meeting with them yesterday. We're working on some kind of concepts as to what assessments would look like if we can't get after any grants. So that takes me to my next point about grants. I actually had the pleasure of writing my first grant last week. I understand it was a little bit more of an easier grant because there was actually a template for the application process. It still took me several hours, and that was interesting. I'm not looking forward to the next one, but I will do another. And I think it's going to be important to exhaust all options, no matter what the project is. There is a lot of money out there. The grant for the townwide communication system was Senator Murphy's office, and from what I understand, there's other avenues that we can kind of go after. So I'm going to try to explore things simultaneously and just see if there's any kind of low-hanging fruit. But going back to the projects, aside from the sewer project, our next meeting on that for all interested parties is going to be on May 5th. The Commissioner of Deep is coming. Commissioner Fountain will be there with the 4 lake surrounding mayors and first selectmen, as well as Candlewood Lake Authority. Well, we invited First Light, and we're now going to invite Lake Willenona because obviously the lake and Tonic feed into one another. So more to follow on that. But obviously a huge price tag associated with it if we don't get after any IIJA funding there. Staffing in town hall. I did want to talk a little bit about that just because, again, there's kind of a lot going on. I may have mentioned before, you may have heard, Doc has announced his official retirement coming up this fall. And we've been working, Marcia, as well with trying to explore options. Does that mean we're going to kind of try to figure out this regionalization effort, which is kind of being pushed across the state in a lot of facets, not just with the health department, but we've explored the Housatonic Valley region, and then which I think has like 5 or 6 towns already in that group. Or Newtown is another option for us. Or are we going to kind of just hold what we got and revamp in-house, bring someone new on board? There are new prerequisites for a director of public health, and that requires the MPH, so the Masters of Public Health. So whether you're an MD or not, you still need that MPH. So there's layers of complexity there. And other areas speaking on the public health department, we're short of sanitarian right now, and that vacancy's been announced, and we haven't had any bites. There is a shortage on special skill sets across the state, so we may be hard pressed there, and we may have to kind of look at increasing salary to maybe try to attract somebody.
What's the impact if that goes unfilled? Both to the public health as well as to any
Yeah,
penalties
so
or anything?
it's a matter of certifying other people, right?
Mhm.
So there's people who can do the work but don't necessarily have the certification, so they can't do the work.
Right.
And we're working on getting an interim person that we have now certified. Now, who's to say that if he grabs the certification, he's going
Right.
to stick with it? Or I mean, so there's so many variables, I guess. And then we did just bring on board another interim. We're definitely going to need a full-time person there. Doc did say we played some catch-up with the interim that we just brought on board last week. She's been pretty aggressive. So it's just we're coming out of the COVID years where inspections weren't happening, so things piled up, and then with the departure of Lisa, a lot to be done. So kind of similar is the fire marshal, and I want to get into details of every department across town hall, but I'm just using these as examples because there might be areas where eventually I might have to look for some part-time help. And I was trying to avoid that at all costs, but sometimes, and I'm not saying we're going to go there at this juncture, but it might be an ask coming down the road. Jason's been away on active duty. He's supposed to be coming back in May. Noreen, since we're now providing the second dose of the COVID vaccination, has been taking calls there. And so what I'm trying to get after is using what we've got in-house with the 4 admins in the land use department, instead of, trying to procure other assistants. What we've got here first, and then if that doesn't end up working out, see what the next steps are. I actually explored an intern, and it turned out that wasn't best use of anyone's time. So we could always try that again. I'm not opposed to it. I think that's it for updates, aside from the ARPA, and then I just have 2 questions. The ARPA is already moving along swimmingly. Kevin and Marcia have been doing a great job along with others in town hall as far as getting these programs activated and moving along. For example, the small grant, business grant program is available. They've received several applications already. We just need to kind of continue to communicate that and advertise it and get the word out best we can. The resident grant through the Brookfield Recovers program that Ellen is running is available and ready from what I understand. She's also got the job description ready for the behavioral health specialist. The YMCA money is being worked. I spoke with Marie over at the Y this morning. So ARPA's looking like good to go. There's a question with that vis-a-vis the decision that was made regarding the sewer project, and I was asked tonight if the Board of Finance would be interested in a more comprehensive presentation from the WPCA and from Dr. Sullivan to better understand that project vis-a-vis public health and safety, because it's going to be an ask again, whether it's ARPA funded or through the town. So that's out there if the Board of Finance would like a presentation on that. And then the state of the town, I'm about 96% solution on that. I'm still missing input from the Board of Finance, and I thought Glenn at one point had mentioned Eileen would be contributing. So I'm not sure if she received any of my emails, but that we still have time on it.
Sorry,
That's all I
I
have.
am.
Oh, hi, Eileen.
Hi. Sorry, I couldn't split myself get myself in 2 different physical locations tonight. So yeah, I haven't. I'll touch back with Glenn about the state of the town. I haven't worked on it with all the budget stuff going on and everything going on with family. It's been a little tough. So. I'll get back
We'll
to
talk, Eileen.
Yeah.
We'll talk.
Yep.
Okay, any questions for the first select woman?
For me.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. On to the next report of the COE financials. Please do.
Good evening, everybody.
Hello.
Hi.
I sent you all a copy of the report just before this meeting, and I do apologize for getting it to you late. We did meet as a finance committee on Monday and reviewed with Mr. Post the status of where we are. We have, because of continuing exposures on certain line items, we've implemented a freeze on purchases of discretionary, mostly supply type items that are things that are needed, but you can choose yes or no, I'm going to buy them this year. With that, we are currently projecting to meet our budget, right? But it is very painful, is what he reported, and some of the building leaders have asked if there's any room to buy small amounts. He said, I know there's 5K, might be 10 or 15K. He's going out and polling them what's critical. And so one of the things I came to see you all about tonight is that, but let me come back to that. What's happening money-wise is we have a continuing underrun on salaries as we've had some vacant positions. We're having overruns in special education in a number of areas, a little over $200,000 across the different areas. The biggest exposure of which being outplaced education, as we've talked about in the past, but also transportation and some of the professional services needed. And we're seeing overruns in substitutes because of people being out. It kind of goes with the salaries being under, people taking leaves. So and we've had some like $70,000 of COVID-related purchases we've had to make through the year. So that's it's been a continuation of the theme I've reported on over the last number of months. And he thinks and the latest one is we're seeing exposure to heating oil, partly price, but also because it stayed colder longer, right? And the last couple of weeks, we would have normally had the heating off, but it's been very cold in the mornings especially. And so we've had to have the heat on still a little bit more than we would have expected. So with all of that, he still thinks we could make it, but it would be very, very challenging to some of the people who do need textbook type items and things like that. We asked him to go collect us a formal list. But then I would bring it up tonight to see if there's an appetite to receive such a list, and if so, we would want to do that out of a contingent report from you all.
Mm-hmm.
If not, we will tell the team, sorry, you can't buy them, and it will be a continuing exposure. So
We can talk to that now before we go into that. I think that we put forth that agreement that we would backstop you. I don't, from our side, and I'm speaking, you guys please chime in, is we don't want to choke you either and not have you buy supplies right now. So I think the process would be you go to the Board of Selectmen, but I think go for $20,000, and if you have surplus, you give it back to us, but don't choke yourself to get through the interim. I mean, obviously the Board of Selectmen has to pass it, but I think from our side, Dan, Ryan,
Absolutely.
Mary, I mean, let's get 20,000. Eileen, you're there too, right?
Yeah.
Instead of getting a list together, say you need an appropriation for 20,000 with, basic list, give it to the Board of Selectmen, right? And then I think the process we've grown to is this honor system, right? Where we work together.
And we have been, and in fact, we've worked really hard to make sure we weren't here asking over and over again. I mean, as you all know, we've taken it very seriously that we've got to manage underruns and overruns in the Board of Education. So,
and you have, and it's now March, and you're finding it's not working. It is working, but you need to have a need.
But we've had to squeeze.
Yeah. So let's not squeeze to be squeezed to be irresponsible, I guess, at this point. Mary, your opinion?
Yep, sounds perfect.
Dan, again,
Thumbs up. Go for it.
we promised this, that we would backstop you guys with, Again, it has to go through the Board of Selectmen before it comes to us, but I think ask for 20,000 if that gets you through, and then,
Well, we'll have a good list of what is
Yeah.
on the critical path, and, you know, that'll be substantive, right? And it would be, and supported by the financial results, and I would certainly follow that
Yeah.
process.
I'm sure we'll find the source of that funding, where it's gonna come from, whether it's something.
we have it.
Exactly.
Yeah, we have
I'm sure we have
enough,
plenty.
yeah,
Yeah,
there-
exactly.
we have enough to get us through. That's
Exactly.
already been talked about, and it's what we promised.
Yeah, I agree.
As a group, and again, Tara, the last year's budget, we squeezed them down, you know, to a point of, you know, if they have overruns, we would backstop them. This is just something that's really not crazy, for the budget.
Yeah, the hardest bit has been $200,000 of, in-house special ed,
Yeah.
plus 118 of outside special ed, and 60,000 of transportation, which is
Right.
related to that.
Which
And
you
that-
tried to,
Those are the hard ones.
Yeah,
so.
right, and you tried,
Big numbers.
Yeah, I was just gonna add that when I saw in the email earlier today, the 5 to 15, I thought, oh, okay, that's pretty low.
Exactly.
What's happening
Yeah.
here, but
It is,
so,
well, we're trying to
look,
keep it low.
if we
Yeah.
can support it, obviously, I spent 5 hours yesterday with John going to every school, and I was gonna just say compliments. I mean, my gosh, what an amazing school system we have. And I saw your article in the paper this morning, and it is unfortunate, we're losing some pretty outstanding people, but, you know,
If I could talk to that, because people
Yeah,
do listen to
questions,
this.
yes, questions.
And people do have questions. Every person who's left the district has been faced with an opportunity, that has been a wonderful opportunity for them. And we have been blessed in Brookfield by having our administrators stay long periods of time. We've had, the average turnover for principals and superintendents and assistant superintendents is about 3 years.
Is it really?
Yeah, I mean, we actually went and got that information. The fact that we've had a superintendent now for 6 years, assistant superintendent for 6 years, a high school principal for 6 years, Mrs. Diamond for 8 years. And Mrs. Wygonic's been with us for quite a while, but in a couple of different roles. So, you know, just as an example, our special ed director left because she was commuting an hour and 15 minutes each way every day, and she got a job offer in the school in the town right next to her, right? And it was one of those things, she has young children, and for her family, it was the right decision. She loves Brookfield. If she wasn't running away from Brookfield, it's as you said, it's a great district that we have, and it just was an opportunity. And every one of them is an opportunity, that comes up. Sadly, a university teaching endowed chair teaching position for
Yeah,
assistant
that one.
superintendent. That's a really hard one to say no to.
Not gonna compete. So do our
So we're not in a panic. We're going through the interview process to fill those jobs. And most of the administrators have worked it in a way that we have until the summer months, but, you know, so they'll see us through the end of the school year.
are our openings seen as opportunities for others?
Absolutely.
Okay.
We're interviewing, we've actually filled the special ed position, which I'm really happy about, because the single biggest administrator shortage position in the state of Connecticut is special ed directors. So the fact that we got a good one from Greenwich, is really good news.
she's starting early May, right?
Yes, and she'll be starting shortly. In fact, she was in the building today.
Oh, good.
So, that was really good news. Tomorrow's the first day of interviews for the assistant superintendent, and then we'll be posting the opening for the center school position shortly. And we have an acting position at Huckleberry right now with Dr. Pepsowski. So, and it's a little challenging, as you can imagine, with consolidating 2 schools to one and having both of the principals of those 2 schools be 2 of the people who departed, because you can't do full-time, both of them if it's a full-time position, or they'll be in conflict a year from now. So we have to go figure out the right way to work our way through those, and we're working on that. So
So would that be like an intern for one of the schools?
one of those schools will probably be an interim
Gotcha.
position. And there are people who will do that.
Yeah.
So it's there's challenges to it, as I can imagine, and thank you for giving me a moment to talk about it, but it's not bad news for Brookfield. It's good for the people that got interesting opportunities, and they've been with us a while, and we are so sad to see them leaving us, but you know what? It's part of what goes on in education. And in the state of Connecticut, all of a sudden, but there's a big rotation going on, and we're seeing like the sucking noise from other districts, because they look at Brookfield and they see positive things. and they will actively reach out to our people. And that's a good thing, right? All things considered. It's a hard thing to manage, but it's a good thing for the individuals, and it says something about our district. So that's all I have on the Board of Ed report. We'll send you, for Selectwoman, a formal request once I have it, and I appreciate everybody's support.
So timing of that, are we gonna wait until May, or are you gonna go, I mean, to approve it, but go ahead?
These are the sorts of things that you can make the decision to act on it in the month of May,
Okay.
right? And the one that's an issue, which I'll probably just approve within ourselves and take a risk, is, because we are always, maybe one step ahead, is apparently one classroom has reached a point where they need the next section of materials because the kids have moved along so fast. And that's like imminent, and I'll tell them to go ahead and proceed on that, and if not, we'll have to find another place to find.
I just don't, I mean, May, have 4 weeks left of school. I want to make sure that you're buying when you need to buy.
Yeah, I understand. With your nod, we'll go ahead and take
Our nod.
With your nod, Tom, we'll take the risk, and we'll actually get it to the Board of Selectmen for their next meeting, so that's actually well before the middle of the month, right?
If it's needed, we can meet quick. If it's really becomes an emergency, we'll meet to help out.
Yep.
Yeah, because to your point, our next regular meeting is May 11th.
Right.
I think it's just the knowledge of knowing we can support it that will get you through this right now.
Yep.
So, thanks, Bob.
That's it. Yeah. And by the way, just a general question, in terms of the upcoming town meeting, have you all considered who's doing what presentations, and are we expecting the Board of Ed to do anything? I guess is the question. Oh, I'm getting a smile from both you and you. It must be an interesting question.
No, I haven't really thought about it. Dan,
I know who's not doing a presentation.
You did the best.
You did a great job.
Thank you very much.
You did the best.
Dan hit on the mill rate.
Yes. Usually the Board of Ed does present to their slide during that, correct? I thought,
We've done it both ways over the past 4 or 5 years, and so I wanted to make sure we were clear before we lose people too much for the school holiday.
Yeah, when I was looking at the town meeting, I went back and clicked on Steve's from last year, but I don't think I got that far when I realized, oh, that's the annual meeting, that's the town meeting. So I need to go back and
Steve,
watch
I think,
that.
did it last year.
I think last year he did. I think the year before, Rosa did.
Yeah.
Probably right.
Yeah.
So.
That's between.
I would ask if you could do that, that would be fantastic.
We would be glad to do it. I just wanted to make sure we're prepared, and we'll just use the same chart, I think, that we used in the public hearing. I'm presuming that we generally use the same deck. But if there's a change of the deck, we can work on that.
Yeah, that chart was prepared by Ken, and I spoke to it best I could, but it'd be great to have expert people who know the numbers there.
I'd be very happy to do that. And Dr. Burrow will be there for questions.
I don't know what the audience looks like for the annual. Go to the town meeting or?
Yes.
Yeah.
Usually, if it's a big for the public hearing, it's big for the town meeting, and vice versa. If it's small for one.
We had 45 people, of which 30 were town employees.
Or thank you. I'll just work with you directly as we get closer.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right, thanks, Bob.
All right, thank you.
Thanks.
All right, Marcia, it's your show now.
All right, and, you received the paperwork, earlier that, so as the revenues, we were projecting a surplus last month. We're still projecting a surplus. The papers show it as a little bit smaller, but we cut the month off early, so some of our month-end procedures, we hadn't posted interest, we hadn't posted, the way the credit cards work for, land use and, town clerk, we kind of post them as receivables. It works. And so I would expect once we had the cutoff, if we had done it with that, the numbers would be similar. As far as any changes since then, we are receiving a $47,000 blight fine that is already in the attorney's hands, that for 857 Federal Road, 857A. I tried to figure out what that was, and it's a 100-unit apartment. What's the name? Barnyard. And then I want to do some discussions on the grants later, which are other potential revenues. But essentially, if you listened last month, not too much different, this month. We're still capping the taxes at 99.1%. The totals are a little different because why isn't that the same number? Allocation between current and, supplemental, but in total, they total up.
Yeah, so this is something we got, I'm glad you brought that up first, and something between now and budget we need to pay attention to and make sure we're still tracking, because we're actually using that surplus as opposed to just whatever's there is going to
Correct.
fund. We're actually using it for purposes, so we have to make sure that it's still tracking.
Correct.
Yep.
And we should be getting, this week, is the end of the 6-month period, for the, tax sales, so we might get a bump in, from that. But yes, and so far it was still going good. We were still limiting it to the 99.1, and it was still coming in at like 99.22. And we had, looked and, we didn't include 21 in there, and we realized because it was an odd year, and we realized that we pulled the wrong numbers, and that's why it was odd. So we put 21 in and included it in our averages.
To be clear, we cap it at 99.01, right?
99.01.
And then
yes.
it's 99.22, so that's a bigger, okay.
Yep, 99.01.
Gotcha.
I just didn't want to be too aggressive on
Yeah.
what we were doing. So that's where we stand on revenues. On expenditures, again, you have the printout that right now we're 193,000 under budget. The big parts of that is health insurance. Health insurance, we had 1 drop off, and we had 5 that used to be family coverage, which is $2,600 a month, for single coverage, which is $900 a month gross before their 20%. And so that's been really great for our health insurance. We noticed that when we did next year's budget, and so that's why we recalculated this year. But we have to remember that it could switch just as easy the other way.
It's switched and went the other way.
Yes, we have 68,000 of a surplus because we refunded some bonds. It's like refinancing. We can only do that once they're 8 years old. So every year we check, is there any that we can refinance? And that saves us 68,000 in this year's budget. Heart and hypertension, we had 2 people that were receiving that, and so we project a liability that made us have a fund balance that wasn't funded, and so we were going to put 20,000 over, and Mark Mulvaney had us divided up, and I can't really remember. 12,000 was a current year cost, and 8,000 was just fund the deficit, or vice versa. But unfortunately, one of our beneficiaries of that died, and there could still be a claim for the next year. There were no claims, so we didn't have to fund that money over there that we should have enough in that fund to cover it. And no new claims have come in, and it's limited to a certain number of years, like a 10-year period, where if they were working in that period, they could. There are still some potentials out there. And then contingency, that you had asked me to rejigger it so that any operating transfers came out of operating, and so we had the budget meetings this month. We went through with everybody on, do they have extra? And we got a lot of extras this year that usually they don't give it up quite as early. So we were able to rework what was transferred out of contingency. So in the full contingency we have there, after we take 252,000 out, which was what we talked about, one of our funding sources of to fund some capital items, we would have 69,000 in contingency, which is where I would recommend we take the Board of Education out of, because that's what we had put it in there for. We weren't going to make that transfer until later in the year, so that make sure it's still there by the time we get there. However, in the transfers for tonight, we're asking an exception to that. Of the 252, we would like to ask you, and it's highlighted in yellow on your page, we would like to ask for 52,000 of that to be transferred now. That 52,000 is for an emergency roof repair over the office at the high school, that they have the materials, they believe they can get the materials, unlike the larger project over the roof, the guidance roof. So we, that would, of the 252, we would transfer 52 tonight if you approve it, and then there would still be 200 that we would wait till later in the year and make sure we still have contingency to cover that. Also, so that would leave us the 69,000. Of that 69,000, the police, we had cut their scheduling program that they didn't go over to Kronos when we went over, because they didn't want to do it in 2 steps, have everyone disrupted to move to Kronos, and then have everyone disrupted to move to a scheduling program. I wish I would have remembered to bring it, but a few years ago, we went through the scheduling on how they do that. This person fills out a slip of paper, and that slip goes into this box, and this person brings it and puts it into this program, and it's a very manual system, and there's about 5 steps involved. There are errors, with the change in administration, that it seems that our new captain with an IT background says, "What are we doing here?" That and so he would run it, that he would install it and take that. So we had cut it, saying that, oh, they could pay for that out of their outside services. The Board of Selectmen had cut it. Then the Board of Finance took and bought or approved rifles, and I forgot what else out of the outside services. So now there's not money for them to pay that. And so they're asking if you would consider of that contingency, if there's any, as we go forward, could you fund the 30,000 since we're taking all the other stuff out of their outside services? That would leave 39,000 minus the 20. It would still have 19. But again, we talked about doing that later. So if you add all that up, it adds up to 197,000 under budget. The 4,000 that goes the other direction are the small overtime amounts that we work so hard to not put in contingencies. I didn't ask for transfers to cover the little amounts because with, for example, the perfect attendance, we don't cover them to the end. We try to cover them from everyone's budget. So right now they just show up as negatives in there. Any questions on that? These are the transfers, as you see that the additions, if we start from the bottom, we're adding the money back into the contingency. There were 2 places that we took money out of contingency. One was because the CSEA union contract wasn't approved until after the end of the year, so we don't put that in the budget until it's approved. That was about 36,000, and the second one was the Candlewood Lake Authority, which was about 13,000. Transfer to Heart and Hypertension, put that money back in. I forgot what that money was transferred out for, but you asked to put that back in. The 52,000 is the money we just talked about for the school roof. The bond interest, you had passed that transfer contingent on us trying to put that back in, so we did. We have grounds overtime. There was overtime for the grounds, and then there was overtime for the highway crew. That was more than just nominal amounts. That was because of the timing of the storms. The highway crew, we were able to take it out of other savings, fuel and things in their budget. So you don't see that here, but the grounds, we didn't have it in the budget. So we're adding that back in. The blight legal fees, we had added some in. It's been about 15,000 each year since we've started a separate blight accounts. Based on the purchase order right now, it looks like they need about $1,500 more for legal fees. And then, community development wages, we try to, we put that in the gross in the general fund because we always want the money from continuing salaries to be in the general fund. Then we offset that to go to projects. And every year it's a little bit different on how much we can allocate to projects. We haven't been able to allocate a lot of it to projects because, for example, he's done a lot of work on Still River Greenway. We have no grant for that to allocate it to. We don't want to allocate it to that without having, a real source to pay for it. And so we're not as much has been able to be allocated. It's still not tying out percentage-wise, but he expects that going forward, we're saving money on the inspector for phase 3 of streetscape because he does that inspection and we can allocate his time for that. So we expect a big chunk that will be allocated from now to the year end as we do phase 3. So that's why there's money being added there. And then small amounts that are coming out, the health insurance, we talked about that savings. The other insurance that we're working on rolling out the things that need to be done for cybersecurity, so we saved money there. Fire marshal is on military leave. Recycling, we're using Oak Hill now instead of New Milford. And then the electric, we saw that next year when we were doing the budget was going to be not as high as we had expected. So we went back and looked at this year and we expect a surplus there. Any questions on any of that? See, I'm staring you down.
No, I'm just there. I'm looking
Okay.
over your head.
All right.
Am I intimidating?
Capital projects, you have a schedule on all the capital projects. The project transfers, I've just put them in for my own benefit to see where in your benefit, to see where they might come out. But those aren't in stone because we don't normally, the Board of Ed does, and it creates a lot of questions. They show you the encumbrances. We don't usually show you encumbrances on our operating budget. They're very consistent on capital, that they always have an encumbrance when they do it. So every department does it the same. So we did show it here. So so that's what we would need if the full encumbrance was spent. The places that you probably are most worried about is who needs more money. There's some positives in there because we're transferring from a contingency or related projects that reval that we had the budget based on the 5 years of this is what we needed, and it looks like we might need $1,000 more. They're not bad for a $500,000 project. The Still River Greenway Master Plan. We talked about that last year. This wasn't the year to put in money for that, but we talked about should we have something in the budget, because in order to get these grants, we have to do some planning. But that's what that was, was money to pull together the plan to try and get some grants.
Is this part of the tri-town project that?
I don't think we're going southbound anymore.
Oh, really? Too much, okay.
Holding pattern.
Okay.
This, I think, was more related to this campus. There were 2 grants that we looked at for about $250,000 each. We didn't get either one. So we need to find funding to cover that, and we do have the funding from other projects that we could.
That was going to the parking lot, right? Yes, I remember that.
And stairs and the streetscape phase 2 that Greg is on the phone. Don't let him talk because you don't want to hear what he has to say about this. That phase 2, he has been trying to close out for several years, and they owe us money. That they've got change orders. That and when you talk to the Department of Transportation, when they say that we'll get back to you in a half, and you think, in a half a week, in a half a year, that they talk about things well, because they're working, this is even before they were working remotely, but, and now it's even worse. So that has been a bane of his existence. And I think when it says there, when I put it in as revenue, I was noticing that today when I was doing this, that it shows as additional grant revenue. No, that's additional town revenue that we would need, that, you know, provided, assuming all these things work out, that, you know, that we get the ones that are, the change orders. We had a meeting with them a year ago that trying to say, when are we going to get those? Oh yeah, we're going to get those. And it's not done. He asks them repeatedly. We've gone through, we had some admin person up there that was really good on the original Still River Greenway project, named Z. And we reached out to Z to say, Z, we're not getting anybody respond. Could you help us? And it helped us for one phone call. That was about it. So we're just sitting ducks here on that one. All other projects are expected to be under budget. Any specific questions on the capital project schedule?
Yeah, I have one.
Okay.
In all the projects, there was contingencies built in. Where is the contingency monies in all of these? Are we running to the exact dollar, or did we spend all the contingencies? Or
No,
do we have
you can see the zeros, the negative numbers in there. Those are the ones that where there's extra money that's come out. And so it's falling to the bottom line. If you look at the very last page, you'll see that,
page 4 or page 5?
Page 5. You'll see that there's, for bonded projects, about, 11,910 that we think is going to be extra money. But the ones that had more contingencies really are the CNR, capital non-recurring, cash capital. We think that there's 103,000 that's falling out down there.
That's the contingencies.
Those would, correct, because they didn't spend them. Some, they're not ready to say, oh, we don't need all of it. So if the truck hasn't come in yet, they're not giving up they say, oh, let's wait before we, but the ones that are finished enough for them to figure that out is 103.
So shouldn't that be higher for like the greenscape, and the same thing with the water line that we put along Candlewood? That was like.
That's not in this schedule. The water line is,
so we had a 10% contingency in there too.
There was, the big one.
Yeah,
and
big
we'll
one.
see that big one. But this is just bonded and cash capital, and that is a separate fund. And I can pull a report out on that one.
Yeah, I'd like to see where we stand on all the contingencies. There should be surpluses in every project.
So there are surpluses in these, but there's other capital projects besides these, mostly the water line, the school, and trying to think, and I guess those are the only ones that are outside of these two funds.
Right. But the water line is done now, isn't it?
The water line,
the
Greg,
paving.
this is so much pressure with you listening that there's some big boulders, and we have to pay for the amount for the boulders, but we have that amount, so we just have retainage. Is where I believe we stand as of the last time Greg and I talked. So it will be well under budget, and I can give you a report on that.
Thank you. Okay. Any other questions? Okay.
All right. The audit update that we want to approve the auditors, that we kind of already think we're going to do that. They should be sending us a engagement letter. Probably it's the best practice to wait till we get that. We think we know the price. We think the engagement letter is going to be a template, but let's look at that. But we want to do it by May 31st. We have to report to OPM by May 31st who our auditors are going to be.
I think we're going to stand by kind of the agreement we had 6 months ago, even though fees across the board are going up in professional services. There you go. That's my plan.
That we have heard nothing else, and they're coming out the week of the 16th to do audit planning.
Okay, good.
New items expected in the audit that we talked last year about the capital assets. We were trying to wait for the financial statements because we redid the town side of the capital assets with an actual inventory. Good thing we didn't wait because we got them in 2 weeks ago. That there's GASB 87, there's a new lease standard that starts. Essentially, every lease is going to be a capital lease. Right now, we have always said that all our leases are immaterial. We've got the two big ones are the Board of Ed has a very large, not large enough to be material, but large copier lease and a lease for Chromebooks, right? So we're going to re-investigate those, see the materiality. It won't have any effect on our budget to actual. It affects Exhibit 1 and Exhibit 2 for the full accrual financial statements. All the pandemic funding is considered high risk because it's brand new, so they're going to have to test that. Our CRF funds were audited in 20 and 21. And if any of you watch the news or want a really good read on vacation, that City of West Haven had their audit, special audit, that pull it up, 25 pages. It is a fabulous read.
Really?
That, oh my goodness.
You know what it says?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that it's a fabulous read. That the finance department met on it and said, okay, and mostly gloat that to say we're pretty good. That, but besides that, that I thank the finance department that we do not have that. That so they had just to try and make my presentation a little fun. That they had about $2 million of ARPA money, of CRF money. That we spent that in 20 and 21. Already went through our auditors, but then the state has CohnReznick going in and doing their due diligence on the money. West Haven went first because, and that they may pick us to audit us as well. They had, if you remember, their town council assistant was also a state rep, and he paid the money to himself for the company that he set up for his.
Yep.
So they, from what we can gather, they had about $2 million. That was about $600,000 or $700,000 that was disallowed. So now we've got $1.2 million that they're auditing after the fraudulent money's out of there. Of the $1.2 million, the audit firm disallowed approximately $1 million. That they thought things should have receipts. They thought things that if you're paying someone for a salary, that it should have or paying someone for hours worked, it should have the hours and the rate, and they couldn't give them that. That some of the things they couldn't read. I mean, for the auditors to have gotten this far in, that they showed up at a place where they put in new showers and there were not new showers.
Oh,
that I mean, it's a fabulous read. But we did go through it and we did say, you know, what can we pull from this that maybe we should, because we want to redo our policies and procedures. We've been working on that for a few years. That and what ideas would we have that based on these comments and recommendations and grant policies and procedures. I think we should talk more about that because people go out and they get these grants, and what we're finding is then they don't want to deal with them, and now finance is tracking down, okay, we need time that just says we're going to give in-kind services. You know, did you keep track of it? And then it's left in our lap. So we've already talked about we want policies and procedures. You apply for the grant, you're going to be there when we're trying to do the accounting for it. We talked about electronic signatures. Right now, we email the disbursement ledgers to the treasurer and the first selectman. Should we ask for something coming back? Instead of just a negative approval, you know, negative confirmation that, you know, tell us if you have a problem, should we do it proactively and have documentation that you looked? That and we're reaching out to some of the other towns to see what they do. Most of them do the negative, as far as I know. I know New Canaan, that the treasurer says if it's over $50,000, he wants to sign it, and he just goes from home into Munis and can pull up the documentation and look at it there. So that's one that we want to look at. Vendor approval forms that, right now, that we have something that we all sign when we come in, that didn't cover your case, that, for example, that does someone, work as a vendor getting more than $10,000? Well, this is based on our code of ethics. Or do you own a property beside your house? That's all we ask. That, should we have a vendor approval form that says, you know, who are your officers? Do you have any relationships in town that, and go through that, and then have an employee independence. So we all filled that form out when we started. That some people might have been 30 years ago. We're never asked to update it, based on the ethics form, but should finance say, okay, we also want employees to do an annual independence form that, do you have any relationship with respect to any vendors, that there are any, you know, it'd be good to know any other employees that, if I've got this person that's you know, putting time in and, oh, I didn't know that's your sister-in-law that's approving your time, that, it would, so those are some of the things that we thought that maybe we could look at.
KYC, know your customer type stuff, yeah.
Pardon me?
No, I'm just mumbling.
Oh, okay. That, but excellent read. There's a link. I'll send this to you. That, it's pretty high up on their website. 2023 budget update. That, we haven't heard anything from the state on health insurance. That we're expecting that hopefully by the end of the month. The Board of Ed Finance Committee talked about maybe escalating the timing of that, you know, there's no reason why they have to wait until now to tell us they could, you know, move their process forward, even 6 months. That, so that's the health insurance. State revenues, they go through 3 cycles. Right now, we based ours on the governor's budget. The appropriations budget came out this week, and we're waiting for CCM to allocate that to the different towns. Just looking at the total numbers, that it doesn't look like we're going to go down, but we don't know how that any changes in allocations might affect us. But that's not the end. So we look at that now, and then ultimately it's the final approved budget. So we get 3 different sets of numbers for that, and we're waiting for the second set. On the town side, we don't know, and even on the Board of Ed side, he talked that we don't know of any material changes that in the budgets as we have them. The capital budget, the only thing we know is the middle school walls, 3 walls, were budgeted at the high end of 700,000, and the low bid is $1 million. That, so we're not committing to that. That they're still going through scoping meetings to make sure that we're all on the same page, make sure that everything is as we expected as far as what is going through. So the Board of Ed, people from the Board of Ed team, the MBC and Jules from purchasing are all meeting to go through that. If we need more money when it comes out, that and that was a low bid by a good margin. If we need more money when that comes out, how would we do this? The 700,000 was in the budget for May. That so I called the bond attorney. Is there a way to change that? But we don't want to change it at this point. The total that it's 8 million, whatever it was that we were bonding, but we could change the allocation. And if we were to do that, probably what we say is, okay, maybe we need another 100,000 for this. Go through the approval process between the selectmen and the Board of Finance to say, okay, if we needed 800 for this, could we take 100, I would say, from the radios at this point, and then just kick the can down the road. If the radios come in full steam, then, okay, now we have to find 100,000 someplace else. But for right now, nobody is doing anything. It hasn't even been approved to be done yet. But that's letting you know as soon as we know that we do have something that we're looking at.
Why is it too late to change the number in the prospectus? Is the prospectus published yet for the May bond?
No,
Well,
Is the number of days between?
it's the number of days
So it
and filling out that, I don't have my notes from the meeting with her,
It is-
that it's the number of,
Something special, the bonding.
okay.
if we had a different charter, we might have been able.
Yeah, I know.
There's a charter revision here.
There you go. But that's everything we know about next year's budget. So only one little piece of bad news. That's other items that we are full tilt on grants. We're working on ARPA. Setting up project codes. So every division will have a project code, just like we do with the capital, so we can keep track of each one. Some of them, like we've got a whole bunch of fire department equipment in one project code. You know, what if Candlewood decides to spend all the money on their equipment? So we're dividing that up with purchase orders so that we keep track of that. We're looking at specific compliance issues, that premium pay, that we can't pay volunteers premium pay out of that category of ARPA, but we can pay them out of the lost revenue section of ARPA. My concern was there's limits on what we can pay volunteers before they become employees. So we ran that past the attorney, that there is no dollar figure on what that is. And I would assume that, it's all assumptions from everybody, that, you know, if this is a one-time thing for your special thing, it's not going to throw them any place. And then the other one is, can we pay third-party employees? The EMS is people that we want to give premium pay, or it's not called that, but this extra stipend to our employees of Vintech, that we can do that. And the best way that we're thinking to do that, we don't want to pull them on ours, have them subject to our workers' comp, have them subject to our unemployment, is we'll pay Vintech and ask for documentation that they got, tell them how much and ask for the proof that they got paid that. Taxability of payments for assistance programs. So if individuals, it won't be taxable. It already isn't taxable what would they get now. Businesses, it will be taxable. Subrecipients or beneficiaries. The small business program, Greg did a lot of work to get that format down. But we took out that they report back to us on what they spent it on, because we want them to be beneficiaries and not subrecipients. Difference being, subrecipients were audited to see that we audited them and that they spent it appropriately. It's only $5,000. It can be spent on anything. What's appropriate and what's not appropriate? Who cares? Nonprofits, if there's we're looking at that as $50,000 cutoff. YMCA is $50,000. We might give them $49,999. Again, because of the different reporting thresholds on what we have to do for that, and the risk that we take on them. We can't override the purchasing rules for federal grants. So my concern is the fire truck. It's already purchased. So do we give them a donation to, an amount to the fire department instead of saying that it's the fire truck? I'm still working through that one. The ambulance or the fire truck, either one, the federal government allows it sole source. Is it really sole source, or is it sole source of the type of equipment that we want? So again, we might slow some of these down in paying, just to make sure that we're following the rules and not gonna get the West Haven report. And then finally, if we're paying someone $200,000 in salary, what is that salary? If it's salary and benefits included, And, you know, your health insurance, not your health insurance, your, health insurance depends on if you're family, if you're single. So probably we write it up to say that we will, you know, you're paying 100% by the grant. It might be 2 years, a little bit longer if you're single coverage, a little bit shorter if you're married coverage. But that's what we're working on.
Did you create that spreadsheet, by the way?
I did.
Thank you. That was really good.
Oh, okay. I didn't see it go anyplace else, but I guess it went to you.
Thanks. Glad I got that one.
We're working on, grants for Storm Ida. ARPA, we already have, over half. We're gonna get the other half this month. Storm Ida, please assume that we're gonna get 0% until we get it. But, anything with FEMA, let's assume 0% until we get it. That, one of the things that they had a problem with is nobody measured before the storm how much sand we had, in a number of inches over the water line. That, I mean, this is what they're dealing with here. Kevin is working on that. So far he's got over 200 hours trying to work through this. The total damage is estimated at $100,000. That, FEMA would pay 75%. We pay some to the fire department, which, we pay them. They do not credit us with the money for their time. Makes sense. They just take that and put it into their own coffers. And we started thinking, why are we paying them for the money that we just wait a year for it to come back to offset the expenses? Let's just not pay them that. And we'll have to talk to them about that. There's a potential that they might pay 75% for damage mitigation. The first finance committee meeting I watched, that you were against those steel poles. That, that is damage mitigation. That, so just, we may be coming to you that, some of these things, they might pay 75% so that the beach doesn't erode again, that, so the kids' kingdom. So start thinking about if you like that idea or not. That, yeah.
I love it.
That, you know.
How are they measuring the sand level?
We didn't, and so they're saying, oh, we might not be able to approve that, but apparently we've gotten past that.
Okay.
But this is what takes the time to do this. So we post that as revenue in the period it's approved. There's different projects, there's different categories, and they could be approved in different years. And some might be posted this year. Trying to entertain you, I've got pictures of the beach erosion. And you can see the water, that 8 inches of water in 4 hours. I forgot what they told me. That this is the kids' kingdom. That $5,000 worth of mulch just washed right down to the field. These are the roads and culverts. Wisconneer Road, the West Wisconneer Road. That's right south of, right by the church there, south of the school. That bridge totally fell apart. The WPCA, the Public Works fixed it themselves. Lake George Road, Hidden Brook Drive, and High Ridge. Some of the water, the power of the water. If you remember the storm and saw in Bridgewater, that little wheel at that red house as you just crossed the bridge. That was the storm.
Police officer died in that storm.
Right.
Oh, yes. The other items, no pictures on this one, were the vaccination grant. That we've got about $77,000 worth of costs. In year-end 21, they were in the general fund. In year-end 22, they're in the grant fund. So the first reimbursement we get will go to the grant fund to wash them out to zero. Any other reimbursement will go to the general fund. Again, this is from our allocations and not necessarily from what's allowed. That, you know, if we bought pink gloves and they require blue gloves, we would not expect this to be approved in 2022, but that's the magnitude of it, and they reimburse 100% of whatever they approve. And then reopening grant. The reopening grant is for cleaning, social distancing, PPE, storage of PPE. That right now we have added that up from the beginning of what has not been reimbursed by any other place. up to December 31st, and we have $852,000 of those costs, mostly the Board of Ed. We've got in there 185,000 of remote learning. Okay, I don't think that's going to be covered. So 607,000 of cost, maybe. It would be covered 100%. We're not counting on any of it. Because again, some of the stuff that, well, you know, you could, they're talking about, we have the isolation room monitors in here, that's part of social distancing. And some of the things they're talking about, well, what were the hours that someone with a positive case of COVID was actually in that room so, I mean, there's a lot of reasons for them to disapprove just about anything they wanted to, but, my best guess is 657,000. If they take out isolation monitors, 600,000. I mean, we bought all those screens. They're specifically stated the screens and stuff are reimbursable. What they're going to say of why they're not going to do it, I don't know. But again, probably not going to accrue any of that this year. Any questions on any of that?
Where do you find time to track down answers to all of that? It's a lot.
And we're pretty much, there's three of us that are working, you know, we approve invoices and do payroll and our regular stuff, that everything else that we're doing are these grants to try and get them done and get them out. Right.
Questions? Dan, any adding to the audit stuff?
No, just that, would really like to get that nailed down at our next meeting prior to them showing up the following Monday.
Yes.
So if we can get that engagement letter in the next couple of weeks so that
Yes.
we can get that, that'd be great.
So that you'll just take care of that from our side? Thank you.
I think you have to actually, who signs it? Tara sign it or does Glenn sign it?
I sign it.
Yeah, so you'll have, yeah.
Yeah, I'll sign it, because
Okay.
you're gonna
Yeah.
manage it,
Yeah.
process
Yeah.
it. and-
Yep.
All right. I don't think we have any old business. New business, budget. Anybody want to comment on any of the budgets? Talked a little bit about it tonight already. I think we're still good, right? We're gonna go for May 3rd. We have to just figure out the presentation.
Yep.
And then, move it forward. The feedback, we haven't got a letter
Not one.
on the budget. So the Board of Finances have received 0 letters in regards to the budget, which is unique. Really, you've got 0? So
You usually do.
some years you get hundreds and some years you get 20, and this is the first time we probably got 0.
I think you're probably right.
So that's usually a good sign that everybody's on board with the decisions that were made, because it's usually the people that aren't on board that write the letters. So I think we're in good shape, hopefully. Yeah, exactly. All right, on to the transfer request, so the PD drone request. So I'll make a motion that the Board of Finance approve the appropriation of $15,700 from the Police Department Outside Services Fund for the purchases of the drones and other associated software and equipment to inaugurate the UAS program within the Police Department as outlined in the memo dated January 5th, 2022. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, discussion.
I think we left off on that about wondering what the recurring costs were for it, weren't we? Wasn't that one of the outstanding questions that we had? When we saw it the first time?
I do, but I think it's been vetted pretty much through the Board of Selectmen at this stage.
I don't know what the answer to the recurring cost on the drone is.
Okay. Because, all right. What's your concerns, Eileen?
No, I just thought that that was where we had left off with it. I thought that was one of the reasons why we weren't sure about approving it. So I didn't know if we had gotten that information.
Dan, your thoughts?
Postponed it for a question that we don't have an answer to.
Yeah.
I need that answer. I would think that if it was important enough to postpone it.
Ryan?
Yeah, I mean, I think they're funding it out of the outside service fund. I don't assume that ongoing costs are gonna be higher than this, so I would think they'd be
No.
able to capture it in their outside services funds, but I agree. I mean, we should probably ask that question.
The outside services, we only use for one-time things. You had asked, when you postponed it, you had asked about licensing and things, you know.
And the storage fees, you know, storing it in the
Well,
cloud.
knowing that, then I agree. We don't know.
Mary?
I mean, it's good to know, you know, are we talking a few $100 a month? Are we talking thousands of dollars a month? You know, ongoing in the future?
If there were ongoing costs, where would they fall?
In their police budget.
Then they don't have it in their budget appropriation for next year. Was it a line item that they had in their budget?
It was not a line item that they had in their budget. No.
Do we have any idea what the regular data storage costs are? I mean, I can't imagine it would be a much, and it's, you know, not like a daily use. It's not body cam data or anything like that. So I imagine it's minimal. It's just a question that I think we didn't necessarily get
And I
answered.
think it was licensing, because you needed licensed pilots or whatever they called them, that, I think that was one of the original questions.
So let's be clear then. So what do we want to know? So when we go back, we want to know ongoing operational,
Mhm.
storage, right? Data storage, correct? That's what you're talking?
Yeah, data storage,
And licensing,
licensing.
right? And
I think there was
So then
at
I
least
was-
one officer that was licensed to fly it, but I don't know if there'd be, you know, costs for additional people to be licensed in case others need to use it.
So then I'll rescind my motion and we'll table this to the next meeting. And we have the three questions: the ongoing operational costs, the cost of the data storage, and the cost of the licensing, annual licensing, and any other costs associated. Correct? Okay. Who's gonna ask that? Marcia or Tara, you're gonna ask the police chief?
I will ask.
All right, on to the next item, the storage garage. So then I'll make a motion that the Board of Finance approve the additional appropriation of $11,500 from the Police Department Outside Services Fund to complete the construction and cost overruns associated with the temporary garage structure located at the Police Department as outlined in the memo dated 2/24/22 from Chief John Puglisi. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion on this?
None from me.
Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Passes 5-0. On to the town side, March budget transfers. I'll make a motion that the Board of Finance approve the interdepartment transfers proposed in the expenditure budget versus actual through 3/29/22, as outlined in the attached report from Marcia Marion, Controller/Director of Finance. Do I have a second? Discussion on this. I think we went through this in Marcia's presentation. Any questions on the numbers?
Nope.
Hearing none. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes 5-0. Okay, any other items that we have before the board? Nope, hearing none. Okay, public comment. Do we have anybody in the audience? Public comment. Hearing none. I'll make a motion that we adjourn. Do I have a second?
Sure.
I'll-
Second. Discussion. All those in favor?